Today, many of us are used to hearing bleak environmental news. It seems like there's always something new to worry about. Fracking, carbon emissions, rising sea levels. But if you listen a little closer, you'll hear stories that break away from this narrative. Stories of people fighting to protect their communities and winning. How hard would you fight to protect undeveloped land or a clean river system? And what if all of the odds were stacked against you? This is the story of an environmental triumph in northern El Salvador, where locals refused to back down from a deal that threatened their clean river systems. Co-authors Robin Broad and John Cavanagh detailed the story in their book, The Water Defenders: How Ordinary People Saved a Country from Corporate Greed. Cavanagh is a senior advisor at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and first heard about the activists' work through a human rights award headed by his organization.
As we were arranging for them to come to the U.S., 5 people, all of a sudden we got the terrible news, this was in 2009, that one of the 5 had been assassinated. And this particular person, Marcelo Rivera, had been organizing communities in the north once they discovered that mining used the toxic chemical cyanide that could poison their rivers. He became a leader of the opposition, and since so much money is involved in mining, mining companies offer large amounts both to local governments and national governments. When people oppose mining projects, often there is violence and often people are killed.
It's a lucrative business, and as demand soared for gold, corporations moved into northern El Salvador to get a piece of the pie. But this precious metal isn't so easy to retrieve. It's tucked away beneath a large river that supplies over half of the country's water. Mining the element releases toxic substances like cyanide and mercury into the water, poisoning the precious supply. As global mining companies like OceanaGold set up camp, the people in these towns worried about the fallout.
So this big mining company came in, it found tons of gold in the north, and it applied for a permit to mine. And at this point, it submitted an environmental impact statement. And to the credit of the incredible people, most of these people in the north who took on the mining company were farmers. And they knew that this would be a very complex environmental impact statement. So they went and they found help. They found an expert who was from the United States, Robert Moran, who was a hydrologist. And he came in. They didn't have much time. The government put it on public display for 10 days. He came in and read it and said, this is going to be very dangerous to the rivers of northern El Salvador. And the people in the north arranged to have him debate one of the company's spokespeople. And so people got a real glimpse at what this could mean, what mining could mean in terms of poisoning their lands and their rivers.
Cavanagh says at first, many people saw corporate interest in El Salvador's gold as a positive. OceanaGold, a multinational mining company, publicized that it would bring many jobs to the region and kickstart the local economy. But after hydrologist Robert Moran alerted local leaders of possible environmental dangers, the project was put on pause. The company wasn't happy.
Now, what the mining company did was 2 things. One, yes, it did a big PR effort. It set up a little foundation. It gave money to the community. It said, we are green, we are sustainable. And the other thing it did is it sued the government in a tribunal that is in Washington, D.C., saying this country has no right to cut off our future profits this way. This is one of the bizarre rules of the global economy. This tribunal is based at the World Bank. And that's in part what also drew myself, my wife Robin Broad, the other co-author, and others in the U.S. and Canada and Australia into this fight, because the people of El Salvador said, can you help us out here? How is it possible that a mining company can sue in a tribunal in Washington, D.C. over our right to protect our rivers?
A government should always act in the interests of the people it serves, but that's often not the case. Across the world, large corporations use their power and money to cozy up to officials and influence decisions.
I want to say overall, a key lesson from this book for us, for people in the United States, is here in one of the poorest countries in the world, El Salvador, people were able to educate themselves. They were able to get the expertise they needed to make the case that it was in the long-term interests of El Salvador to kick out the mining companies and save their rivers. But they had to do it almost entirely on their own. Now, I do want to say they did find allies in the legislature, even in the environmental ministry, but it was always a fight. And it shouldn't be a fight. This should be, I think most people listening to this would say, of course they have the right to save their rivers. But that's not the way the rules are set up, and when you have big, powerful corporate interests, it's not the way most of these battles go.
And these battles between locals and large companies happen every day. Cavanna says that it's not just in distant countries where we hear these stories.
For example, in Arizona, the Apache are fighting to save their sacred lands at a place called Oak Flat from a giant copper mining company. And the key agency that will decide is the U.S. Forest Service. Under Trump, they were leaning towards giving the license to the mining company. Now, under Biden, it's more of an interesting fight, and we hope that the Forest Service will make the right decision and deny the permit.
In the case of El Salvador, its citizens stepped up and defended the river. The initial fight against OceanaGold began with a grassroots effort by a small group of about 50 to 100 people, spreading the word to others in nearby communities.
Marcelo, the guy who was killed, was a brilliant cultural educator, and he used laughter and marches and theater. So they educated the communities in the north. A key piece in their education to reaching the bulk of the public is they worked hard to win over the Catholic Church, very important in that country. So then you have priests preaching homilies on Sunday about the dangers of mining, and then it really spread. And pretty quickly, public opinion polls did show the majority of people understood the dangers of mining and were opposed to it.
Environmental activism is dangerous work, especially in Central America, where corporations can wield a great deal of power. But this time, the risks and sacrifices paid off. In 2017, El Salvador became the first country whose legislature banned this dangerous type of mining.
I do want to say one key twist in this story that was fascinating was at the end, the mining company was saying, come on, we are so green and sustainable. If you could only see our mine in the Philippines, you'd know that. And we, Robin and I, and also some of the activists in El Salvador, had contacts in the Philippines. And actually, we'd even visited the OceanaGold mine there. We knew it was a horrible mine, and it was poisoning the water there. So we were able to get the governor of the province in the Philippines where the mine was to come to El Salvador in the critical week before the legislature voted on this mining bill. And he showed the before and after slides of this beautiful mountain destroyed by a giant open pit. And that helped also turn the tide for certain key legislatures. So in the end, the remarkable thing about this vote in March 2017 is it was a unanimous vote to end mining in El Salvador. Stunning victory that no one would have predicted 2 or 3 or 4 years before.
Unfortunately, the fight may not be over. A new legislature could vote to overturn El Salvador's mining ban in the years to come.
We know that it's important to continue to do the education so that the public would never allow mining again. There is a new president in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. He's more conservative. And yet it's interesting, he has taken no steps to bring in mining.
The short-term economic boost from mining is a tempting offer to many countries. Yet the long-term benefits of preserving natural resources are far greater. The story of El Salvador shows that no matter who you are, if you're united in your fight, you can create change. You can learn more about El Salvador's environmental victory in Cavanna and Broad's book, The Water Defenders. You can also find archives of past shows and guests at viewpointsradio.org. Our writer this week is Scarlett O'Hara. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
Cardiovascular or CV disease is the #1 killer of adults in the U.S., and millions of people trying to reduce their risk of a heart attack or stroke may unknowingly be taking medications that are not proven nor FDA approved to reduce cardiovascular risk. Let's hear from cardiologist Dr. John Osborne.
Many people are unaware that after a failed outcome study, the FDA revoked the approval of fenofibrates when added to statins, as the risk outweighed the benefits to heart health. It's important to remember that statins, along with diet and exercise, can lower cardiovascular risk by about 25 to 35%, but persistent cardiovascular risk, which can lead to a life-threatening event, may remain. I would tell anyone still being prescribed fenofibrates, such as Tricor and Trilipix, with a statin, to talk to their doctor about FDA-approved therapies for cardiovascular risk reduction.
To learn more and get clear on the facts, visit itscleartomenow.com. Again, that's itscleartomenow.com.
Chuck E. Cheese needs you. They're hiring 3,500 employees nationwide to welcome families to its upcoming season of fun. As a work today, get paid tomorrow employer, Chuck E. Cheese offers its employees the ability to access up to $500 off their earned wages instantly after their first week of employment. Octavio Castaneda, Senior General Manager of 2 locations in Bell and Pasadena, California, joined the company in 1999.
Like 80% of the current Chuck E. Cheese restaurant managers, I grew up through the company. I started as a cast member, and now I lead a team of 36 people. Next month, we're kicking off my favorite season of fun, Chuck E. Cheese Halloween Bootacular. It's a great experience for guests and cast members because it's Halloween every day for 6 weeks.
Other benefits for eligible employees include medical, dental, scholarships, discounts, and 401k savings plans. Find out more at chuckejobs.com. That's chuckejobs.com. Or text CHEESE to 58046 for a complete listing of open positions.
New studies show for the first time that reducing air pollution may roll back the risk of dementia. Research reported at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference 2021 shows a clear connection between air quality and physical brain changes defining Alzheimer's disease. What's more, reducing fine particulate matter in the air is associated with slower cognitive decline and a 20% reduction in dementia risk. Claire Sexton is Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
What's exciting is we're now seeing data showing that improving air quality may actually reduce the risk of dementia. Air pollution is bad for our brains and our overall health. This demonstrates the importance of policies and action by both governments and businesses that address air pollution.
Studies were conducted in large populations in the U.S. and France. Sexton says the findings are especially important in urban areas where higher levels of air pollution are common. Find out more at alz.org.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints. Coming up next week.
There will be no women among their leadership. There will be no women ambassadors as there have been. There'll be no women in any kind of council that they form.
What the Taliban takeover means for the people of Afghanistan. Then,
if you'd gone back in a time machine, you'd have seen T-Rex chasing a Triceratops.
What really happened to the dinosaurs? I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.